Welcome back to the session. In today's part of the class, we'll get to know the concepts of characterization of wastewater, especially physical, chemical and biological characterization of the wastewater. I think in the previous part of the semester in water supply and treatment engineering, you have come across the three parameters, especially physical, chemical as well as biological parameters. In addition to that, you have also come across the radioactive parameters. Apart from this, wastewater also contains certain parameters, and the quality or the characteristics means whatever the constituents or the compositions originating either from the residential or from the commercial activities or either even from the industrial activities leads to the formation of the liquid waste. We call it as a wastewater. Okay. From here, the interesting part of the wastewater and treatment engineering starts, because the objective is to identify and to categorize what are the sources of the pollutants and what are the standard limits that is being set by the government of India, or the Ministry of the Environmental Forestry has given the empowerment for Central Pollution Control Board for monitoring of any of the water bodies or the resources. Why the characterization is necessary? Let us get to know all these concepts one by one. Come on. Today it is characterization of wastewater. Characterization of the wastewater means especially to know what are the salient features. I think maybe in the first module you might have heard what are the different types of the characterization. Ashok sir has also stated it, isn't it? The parameter, it may be varying with physiology, psychological constraint, behavioral constraint, all those things and all. Similarly, if you are going to take a wastewater, what are the different constituents? How to characterize them? How to identify whether the materials which are present in a visible form or in invisible form that cannot be seen through the naked eye, and in turn we have lots of chemical reactions. There may be the emission of the odors, there may be the volatilization process that is being carried out. What are those? That is the basis to characterize it. Okay. Now let us get to know all these concepts, and it is also important in the laboratory as well as the practical when you conduct the experimentation also. Okay, keep it in the mind. Now, characteristics means to determine the composition of the wastewater. Determine the composition of the wastewater. What are the major components? Especially out of the 100%, 99% is mainly the solid content, and remaining 1% is only the water. If I need to go for characterizing, since a universal solvent we call it as for the water, how to take back all those things and all to get a clear full water? Why the characterization or the thing dealing to the greater extent in a society? The major thing it is, you need to see that whatever the pollution is taking place, it is mainly due to the excess of the concentration. When there is a excess of concentration of group of the contaminants, then we call it as a pollution. Okay, there is a difference between the contamination as well as pollution. If you take any one of the chemical parameters, one of them is very much higher, then we call it as a contaminant. If all the group of the contaminants are being present, it may be through the biological means or through the chemical means or all these things included together wholly, we call it as a pollutant. Okay. Now, Let us go for the characterization. As earlier I have stated, there are different categorization. We also call it as a parameter, broadly classified under the heading parameter. What are those? Physical. Next, we have a chemical parameter and biological parameters. In addition to this, we also have a radioactive parameter. Keep it in the mind, this is only dealt in a theoretical basis. Practically, it is highly difficult because instrumentation methodology has to be kept separate for that, and it should not be contaminated. All those things to be taken up. Now, what I am going to do, I will take up the physical parameter. Let me categorize all those things and determine the significance. What is the standard set by the CPCB? Let us get to know in the form of the table. Still then, wait for a while. A particular parameter, what are the sources and the significance, and what are the standard limits that are being adopted. In the physical parameter, mainly it is based upon the sense organs. Earlier I have stated it. Particular parameter, if we are going to take it, let us get to list it out and come back for the explaining the sources, significance and standard limit also. For this, first one is color. As soon as we go for seeing it, it is a color. Next, odor. Then the next set you also come across stated for the disposal of the effluents. What is meant by the disposal of an effluent? Whenever the wastewater that are being arising from a different community areas, if they are being let off without any prior treatment, directly disposed of to the environment, then it leads to have an impact on the ecosystem and human health, as well as even the animal and plant growth also. It hampers. How does it hamper? There are lots of research work that is being going on even still today and in the future also. Earlier in the past, it was very difficult to identify. Now with the aid of the tools and the equipments, they are finding it out what are the possible sources of the contamination, but difficult to extract all those contaminations to render them pollutant free from the environmental systems. Okay. Color, odor, and then we come across suspended solids. You also come across the temperature. Okay, these are the parameters. Let us get to know. Color. Whenever the wastewater is released from the residential or commercial activities, in the source we have certain criteria. All the sources, though they have been arising from the aid of putrescible organic matter, that may be a vegetable or arising from the lavatories and even from the kitchens, bathrooms and all, these have a certain set of the characterization. Color, in an source characterization, they are quietly brownish in nature. The wastewater which are generated, they are light brown in nature. After a period of the time, due to the presence of the microorganism, the color tends to light gray in color, dark gray in color. Okay, the dark gray in color, and finally leading on to the complete dark. The brown which is being converted into the dark gray is mainly because of the presence of the aerobic type of the bacteria which decompose the organic matter. Whereas in the case of the dark means it is literally the anaerobic decomposition. Anaerobic decomposition. This is in the aerobic stage. Remaining part of the nutrients are being utilized, therefore leading to the formation of the dark color, which represents the age of the sewage which is being generated. The age of the sewage which is generated. Getting the point clear for this? Now, what are the significance? It indicates the age of the sewage, or what we call it as a wastewater, and for this we have a special annexure, color as well as even the odor also. Odor mainly due to the presence aerobic in the brown condition, there is less odor, or we call it as quite less odor. During the dark gray, some obnoxious odor are also arising it. And in the dark conditions, what happens? The combination like hydrogen sulfide, which tends to give a rotten egg odor, and indot, mercaptan, all this sort of the gases which are arising from the wastewater, they tend to give the obnoxious odor, which exposure taking place by any workers leads to the nausea or vomiting sensation, loss of an appetite to take up the food, and it also sometimes leads to the death condition. You might have seen during the manhole working where the workers or the labor who are conducting the series of the clogging or the cleaning, all those things, they have died there itself only due to the exposure at a high extreme conditions, which causes the irritation also. Okay. So, odor causes irritation as well as the loss of appetite also, and vomiting. So, these are the significance. What is the standard limits it is set for this? There is a certain standards we will take up in the later part of the sense. Okay. Color as well as odor are the major significant thing that you go for seeing directly. What about the changes in the composition taking place upon the biological reaction? Getting the point clear for this? Whatever in the case of the Nagunali, where the wastewater stream is being flowing on, the color is it is black in color, which indicates that it is completely in a anaerobic stage condition. Completion of the anaerobic condition, it states that it is the older part of the wastewater. The age is older. Okay, not freshly like a hourly variations. It is based upon the weekly or maybe the daily variations that adds up to this dark color. Next, let us come for taking across the suspended solids, or in the term solids itself only. What is the term solids? As I have mentioned here, solids are categorized on the different basis. Normally 45% as well as even we have the 55%. 45% is accordance with the organic solids. And 55% is mainly related to the inorganic solids. What are those organic as well as the inorganic solids? Organic mainly contains fats, oil, grease, hydrocarbons, petrochemicals, fertilizers, or all those things comes under the, except the fertilizers, all those particular things in the solid form comes under the category of the 45%. Remaining thing it is in the 55%, they are inorganic in nature. Why they are inorganic? Maybe due to the presence of any metallic ions, salts, or there has been arising from the house like a fertilizers or any of the chemicals that are being utilized. So these tend to constitute the inorganic part of the solids. Now what are those organic and inorganic? We shall discuss in the case of the chemical parameter. Now what about in the case of the suspended solids? Suspended solids are mainly the particles of size less than 1 mm, okay, in some cases also, where they do not tend to settle at the bottom. If you take a laboratory filter paper, trying out to segregate all those things in a conical flask, whatever the wastewater containing the solids, they tend to trap above the surface of the filter. That kind of the solids which are being trapped out, we call it as a suspended solids. The solids which are having higher specific gravity, they are known as a complete solids, okay, and the solids which are being in the dissolved form, minute traces, that we call it as total dissolved solids. Some of the solids which are being volatile in nature, we call it as volatile fixed part of the solids. Are you getting the point clear for this? Okay. Now the solid content, especially the suspended solids, if you need to check for the inland surface water, it has to be in the case of the 100 for inland surface water, public sewers it is 600 and land is 200. How it is represented? It is in terms of an mg per liter. What are the major significance? They block the penetration of the sunlight. It is a home for many bacteria as well as the viruses, even the fungi also. Suspended solids causes the nuisance, and the clogging or maybe the efficacy of the wastewater treatment also tend to differs here. Okay. Suspended solids, the source characterization is mainly arising from the fecal matter, okay, and also even from the bathrooms and even the kitchens also, both. Next, what about the significance of the suspended solids? As I have earlier stated that suspended solids also causes the nuisance. With this, it tends to cause even the odor problems also. Difficult in settlement. When it is difficult to settle, it tends to decrease the dissolved oxygen content in the water. Since the dissolved oxygen present in the wastewater will be very much minimal, especially in the fresh case. When it is in an anaerobic condition, the dissolved oxygen content will be completely negative in nature, which implies that it is anaerobic in nature. Getting the point clear for this? Now, moving on to the next one, it is temperature. How does the temperature affects the wastewater? Some of the temperature are literally higher in nature, some of them are lower in nature. In India, normally the temperature has to be in the range of normally, but it should not exceed more than 5 degrees Celsius. 20 maybe in terms of in Fahrenheit you can take it. Not more than 5 degrees. Getting the point clear for this? Why? What is the reason here? Temperature, it is also an extrinsic factor. Why it is an extrinsic factor? It alters the rate of reaction chemically. It also supports the growth of the bacteria. Some of the freezing condition or the cold climatic conditions, bacteria do not tends to exist or to grow. Whenever there is a favorable condition, there only the bacteria tend to grow. Whatever the DO content is present is also mainly dependent upon the temperature also. Okay. Therefore, temperature, it is an extrinsic factor. What is the significance here? Whatever the temperature, it also alters the rate of reaction. What reaction? Either maybe a biological or maybe the chemical reaction, and changes in the composition takes place mainly due to the alteration or changes in the temperature. Getting the point? So therefore, it has to be less than 5 degrees Celsius. Hotter condition means what happens? If the temperature is higher, DO content will be less in nature. If the temperature is lower, DO content will be slightly higher in nature. Okay, this is the one factor. Similarly, we have the temperature is determined by the usage of thermometer. Thermometer, it has to be determined. There are different varieties of thermometer available, maybe a room scale, or maybe we have a probe also which is inserted to the sample and to determine what is the temperature which is present in it. For suspended solids, we have a gravimetric method of analysis, and from that we can able to characterize it. Even the fixed volatile solids or volatile suspended solids, all together you can come across for this. This is in the case of the effluent disposal standards 100 in the inland surface water, public sewers, and onto the land. There are 3 varieties of applications that will take upon in the model number 3. So, model number 2 to model number 3, there are various continuation aspects. Kindly remember the point. I think you have understood all the set of the concepts. If you have any doubts, you can also discuss for this, and let us move on to the next set of the category, that is chemicals. What are those? Let us get to know. Physical is clear. I am moving on for the chemical parameters. Okay, let us get to know. Moving on to the next characterization, it is pH. What is meant by pH? It is a negative logarithm to that of a hydrogen ion concentration. We also call it as a Sorensen value. You might have come across in the engineering chemistry, and for the diploma students also, pH is the negative logarithm of the hydrogen ion concentration. It is mainly derived from the dissociation of the water in terms of an H plus as well as OH minus ion in an equilibrium conditions. Okay. Now, what is meant by pH? It mainly determines the acidity as well as the alkalinity conditions. How? There is a certain range for the pH. You can look upon for the picture here, where it's starting from the scale of 0 to 14, where the 0 to 7 it represents the acidic range, and from 7 to 14 represents the alkaline range, where H plus ion tends to increase as you move from 7 to 0. OH minus ion concentration will be predominant in the case of greater than 7 to 14, that range. And what is the major part? Wherever you go for taking, even for the water quality monitoring and for the any of the modeling purpose, pH is an important and critical parameter. Based upon the pH itself only, certain other chemical parameters are also dependent. Okay, and the pH, if it has been in the case of less than 6.75 or maybe 6.5 and all, it is acidic in nature. Greater than 7.5 and all, they are alkaline in nature. And what is the major significance? You might have come across in the case of the surface water, it also imparts Extreme pH is if the H plus ion concentration they have been more. Okay, it imparts the acidic condition, which may lead even to the corrosion of the pipes. And if the pH containing the OH minus ion concentration, it is bitter in taste. Acids are always sour in taste. Bases are, or what we call it as alkaline, they are bitter in taste. They have an significant impact on the surface of the skin, causes the skin irritation. Either maybe the acidic or the alkaline, skin irritation. You might have heard regarding the lake acidification process where fishes tends to die. Even during the acid rain formation also, if you check the pH of the rainwater, then also you can identify that it will be always less than 5. Okay, that is the reason where we come across. Highly alkaline condition is mainly due to the presence of the industrial wastewater which is being mixed with the domestic wastewater. Usually the domestic wastewater should possess the pH value from 5.5 to 9.0, 5.5 to 9.0 for either in the case of the inland surface water, public sewers, and even for the land also. Okay. Now, how it is being determined? It is determined through the electrometric method, where the major principle is the electrolytic chemical reaction forming a circuit. That electrolytic chemical reactions will constitute a complete cell reaction, thereby determining what is the hydrogen ion concentration, where the glass electrode and a reference electrode is being utilized through the electrometric method. Now, next important significance is related to the treatment. If it has been completely acidic in nature, how to bring back into the neutrality conditions. If it is completely alkaline in nature, how to bring back to maintain a significant pH, not more than 10, not less than 6.5, like that. That is a condition. Okay. Moving on to the next one, it is related to the oil and grease content. Oil and grease. Why oil and grease? What are the sources of the characterization? Whatever the fats, saturated or unsaturated fat, oils, vegetable extract, animals, as well as some of the edible plants and all, they are the sources for this. It may be the plant as well as animal based derivatives. Okay, fats as well as the oils. The grease and all, it is artificially from the automobiles or any other thing, they clean up near to your home itself only. There are commercial shops are available, they clean it off. Through the passage of the system, it leads to combine and the specific gravity will be less. So therefore, it is characterized by the centrifuge method, and to determine what is its composition and all. Normally, significance of the oil as well as the grease, it may lead to the obnoxious odor also sometimes. It is obnoxious odor due to the decomposition rate also sometimes, and it also causes skin irritation. It has to be cleaned up, and that means to be free from the salts. As well as the skimming tank is provided for taking all those particulates and then drying it out, thereby using it as any other useful manner. Let us get to know it is in the terms of an milligram per liter. Milligram per liter. Odor, it is 10, and for the sewer it is 20, and for the land is also 10. Otherwise what happens, I will explain it during the sewage sickness or in the sewage farming condition. So 10 mg per liter. Getting the point clear for this? What happens if the oil and grease are present? The DO is also declined there. Penetration of the sunlight refracted, no major quantity of the DO content. Thereby, the aquatic animals also get disturbed. You might have come across in the case of the oil spills in the marine or the coastal areas. That has to be driven up or to be taken up, or otherwise it will affect the aquatic habitat also. Similarly, in the case of the rivers, similarly in the case of the ponds and for the land environment also, it should not damage any ecosystem. Because the derivatives, if it has been plant or animal based, okay, it degrades. What about if it is been degrading at a slower rate? It imparts major problems and threat to the society. Next one is mainly related to the total residual chlorine. Total residual chlorine. Total residual chlorine mainly you have come across in the water supply and treatment. That's why it is easy for you also. And it has to be in the range of 1 mg per liter. That's all, not more than that. Why not for the public sewers and all? For inland surface water, why the chlorine is to be maximum if at all if it is being present, because it is only 1 mg per liter. If high chlorine dosage is present, aquatic kills takes place. In the sewers and all, there is no limit mentioned. That means it may be greater also, that you need to bring it out. And moreover, the source characterization is through the different distribution systems where the chlorine is already added. That is also when converted in terms of wastewater gathers. Okay, and significance, it is related to the effect on aquatic environment. This is the case of the total residual chlorine. Next, we shall take up the nitrogen content. Okay, what is meant by a nitrogen? You might have come across, it is the gaseous element. What about in the case of the humans? How you can categorize that the nitrogen is also present in the wastewater? Obviously it is present. How? In what case? If you take back to the nitrogen cycle, just I am showing the picture, you can observe it carefully. There are different set of the phases. The formation of the amino acids, albumin content or the protein content, all these things contain the essential amino acids. These amino acids are present in the NH4, or maybe if the pH is greater than 7, it tends to form in the case of the ammonia. Okay, keep it in the mind. From the ammonia, it tends to form a nitrite, NO2, and from nitrite it is converted to nitrate. From the nitrate, it is to the nitrogen gas. This process is entirely related to the nitrogenous part of the cycle. How it is affecting nutrient condition? Plants also require essential nutrients. Similarly, animals also require the nutrients which are mainly dependent upon the plant sources. Thereby, through the assimilation part or the ingestion, it gets transferred into the different parts of the body, and thereby whichever not essential, they tend to dry away. Keeping on this thing in the mind, let me continue this distribution systems in the case of the excess of the dosage. Let me take upon for the ammonical nitrogen. Ammonical nitrogen. Sources, it is all the amino acids, albumin content. Okay, these nitrate conversion factors takes place. Whatever the fecal discharges, and even in the through the urine also, the ammonia nitrogen is present. Okay, now Next thing it is, what is the major significance? Ammonia, it also imparts toxicity condition to the aquatic plants. Okay, it is toxic in higher concentration. That has to be reduced. Some of the bacteria, they go for degrading all these things. But what about in the case of the living organisms which do not require this? Okay. For this, the ammonical nitrogen is given as in the form of NH4. It is 50 mg per liter. Okay. Maximum it is 50 mg per liter, not in the case of the land or irrigation. Next one, if we take in the case of the total nitrogen fixation, nitrification process, denitrification process essentially takes place. This total nitrogen, it is sum of all those formations. That is the one thing. Total nitrogen concentration shall not be greater than 100 mg per liter. Shall not be 100 mg per liter. Total nitrogen is determined through the Gel-Dahl method. You can determine even the organic nitrogen. It is total nitrogen, there are different components, some of the nitrate, nitrite, ammonical content and all those things and all. Okay. The nitrogen content can also be determined through this, especially the organic nitrogen determination. Significance, it imparts the eutrophication, the nutrient, it imparts the eutrophication as well as the plant growth also. Whatever the rivers which are flowing, you can see along to the side of the banks of the river on the middle where the boulders or large sized rocks are present, near to that itself only there are certain part of the plants which are being growing on. That essential part is mainly due to the uptake of the nutrient, especially the nitrogen content. That's why it should not be greater than 100 mg per liter. What happens if it is being directly drinked for the, or it is utilized for the consumption purpose? If it is being utilized for the consumption purpose, it mainly affects the infants. Mainly affects the infants. That's why the limit is restricted only to 100 mg per liter. With few more things, let me complete it. Next, free ammonia. If you observe the equation NH4, so it is tending to give in the formation of an NH3, mainly if it is in the acidic range. If it is in the case of the reaching to the alkaline range, there is some set of the variations here, okay, with in combination with the water. I am just giving an example, not a complete set of an equation. In the alkaline condition, it is in the formation of the free ammonia, that albuminide or any other things, it is being converted. So this free ammonia, it imparts, it is not completely converted, so partial converted form of a nitrogen. Ammonia, we also have a ammonia toxicity. This ammonia in the free form, it should be only imparted, that is 5 mg per liter in the case of the inland surface water as well as in the land also. There are variations in the ammonia, because maybe if you take in the case of the manufacturing also, ammonia in the form of the gas, it imparts asphyxiation process, immediate death also condition. Wherever the case of anaerobic respiration, or maybe in the case of the hydrogen sulfide during the anaerobic digestion, some part of the ammonia is also being released. Okay, that is the one thing. So free ammonia in the form of NH3 in terms of an mg per liter. Next, if I take the total nitrogen content, see the ammoniacal nitrogen is different from the ammonia. This is in the NH4 form, whereas this is in the NH3 form. Ammonia, it also imparts different toxicity conditions, hence it has to be volatilized, and the process we call it as ammonia volatilization conditions. In the case of any surface water quality monitoring as well as analysis, this is a significant parameter, it is estimated in a higher research conditions. Okay. Sulfide content. Sulfide content. Sulfide content mainly released in the anaerobic decomposition in the form of the hydrogen sulfide. Okay, hydrogen sulfide, it will be less than condition. What happens? It also imports obnoxious odor, as well as it leads to the choking. Higher ranges of the concentration also causes the irritation and death also. Hence, whenever any of the wastewater treatment system, a vent is being placed there for the escape of the gases to mix along with the natural environmental conditions. Okay. For this sulfide content, the amount of the sulfide content is mainly due to the major sources of the anaerobic decomposition, and that is counting to be 2 mg per liter. 2 mg per liter. Sulfide is further converted in terms of an sulfate. Next, last thing I wanted to take up for this part of the session, it is related to the chloride content. Okay, chloride content. Normally, for the chloride in the fecal discharge, it contains lots of the salts, and even whatever the RO, reverse osmosis, that you are going to use it in your homes and all, that is also one of the contribution to the salt content. Whatever the permeate or the rejected in the membrane filtration process, you might have come across, the dirty water is being outlet, clean, that is dirty water as well as rejected part is also being coming across, and therefore this chloride, what happens, it does not have a much significance in the case of the wastewater treatment. They are completely a conservative in nature, but in terms if it is with respect to any heavy metals and all, the reactions will take place here. Chloride, they do not have any limits. What are those limits? Let us get to know in the next part of the class. The method of the determination of the chloride is through the argentometric method. Okay. For the sulfide, it is mainly due to the barium crystal salts in the form of the sulfate content. Sulfide, we can also determine it. So these are the set of the parameters that we have discussed in the case of the chemical characteristics, source characterization, what are the significance and the standards that are adopted. So in the next part of the class, I will continue with much more chemical parameters to be taken into consideration. I hope you have understood the concept, and let us meet up in the next part of the class. Still then, grasp all these concepts, think about it and stay tuned for it. Thank you one and all.